They don't yell, they don't threaten. They smile, and slowly, silently they dismantle you, not with fists, but with subtle demands. Don't be yourself. Don't trust your gut. Don't feel too much. And before you realize it, you've disappeared into a version of you that makes them comfortable. But here's the truth no one tells you. Some people only love the you that obeys. In this video, we'll uncover the 5 hidden ways others sabotage your psychological growth, using Jung's insights to expose the quiet war against your soul. If you've ever felt drained after being with someone, this might explain why. Stay with me. This might just be the most important conversation you've had with yourself. Some people don't want you to grow. They want you to shrink to fit their ideas, their space, their expectations. And the worst part is, this pressure often comes disguised as care, advice, or love. But what they really want is to dim your light so theirs looks brighter. Jung would call this a direct attack on your individuation process. Individuation is the heart of Jungian psychology. It's about becoming who you truly are, beyond social roles, masks, and external pressures. When someone demands that you bend, shrink, or fade just to keep the peace, they're pulling you away from yourself. And that's not just unfair, it's dangerous. Because the more you betray yourself, the more your unconscious will rebel. And that rebellion shows up as emptiness, anxiety, confusion. You start to feel out of place, even when everything looks right from the outside. That's a clear sign of self-alienation. And alienation, as Jung saw it, is the gateway to neurosis. You're alive but numb, breathing but not really living, smiling but not yourself. Imagine spending your entire life playing a role you never chose. Many people do, and pay the price. You might win their approval, but you lose something far more valuable, your connection to yourself. And when the unconscious feels ignored, it fights back, sometimes through dreams, sometimes through pain, always through truth. It's like suffocating a plant and expecting it to bloom. People who want you to abandon your essence don't want you to grow. They want you to obey. And when you obey, you begin to vanish. First, it's small compromises, how you speak, how you dress, what you dream about. Then one day, you can't remember who you were before them. Often, this suppression comes from those closest to you, parents, partners, friends. That's what makes it so confusing. You feel like you owe it to them. But real love never asks you to shrink. It invites you to expand. Relationships that limit your authenticity are cages disguised as comfort. Jung said the unconscious always tries to restore balance. If you abandon your true self to please others, your psyche will fight back. Symbols, dreams, anxiety, all of it saying you're betraying yourself. The cost of self-denial never justifies the applause of those who never truly saw you. That's when symptoms appear: insomnia, depression, emotional numbness. The soul starts to scream through the body because the psyche cannot stand being silenced forever. And the more you mold yourself to fit someone else's image, the more you fracture inside until something breaks. Often that something is your sense of meaning. So ask yourself this: are the people around you pushing you forward or holding you in place? Do they encourage your authenticity or demand that you perform a version of yourself that makes them comfortable? That answer reveals who's truly by your side and who's there to keep control. And that leads us to something even more subtle and dangerous. What if the next step in controlling you is convincing you to ignore your intuition? You know, that tightness in your chest that shows up out of nowhere. That strange feeling that something's wrong, even if everything seems fine. That's your intuition speaking. And when someone tells you to just ignore it, what they're really saying is, turn off your inner compass. Jung didn't just value intuition, he saw it as one of the mind's core functions. Intuition isn't woo-woo. It's unconscious intelligence. It's the deep mind, picking up on patterns, before your rational mind catches up. When you silence that inner radar to follow someone else's logic, you start walking blind. And you will, inevitably, stumble into decisions that look good on the outside but feel all wrong on the inside. People who tell you not to trust your own perception are dangerous, because what they're really doing is asking you to rely on theirs. It's a power move, a subtle way of saying, "Don't think for yourself, I know better." This creates a relationship not just with them, but with their version of reality, and you become a stranger in your own life. The more you ignore your intuition, the harder it gets to hear. It's like it gives up on you. Then you're left needing others to tell you what's right, what's wrong, who you are. A soul that's deaf to its own voice becomes a puppet, pulled by every opinion, every trend, every fear. That's not freedom. That's quiet self-destruction. Jung believed intuition was the bridge between ego and self. It's how the unconscious speaks, through gut feelings, inner nudges, silent alerts. Ignoring that is like cutting the wire to your soul. And without that connection, your decisions lose depth, your path loses meaning, and your spirit begins to drift. Here's the trap. The person who dismisses your intuition often presents themselves as logical, but logic without soul becomes blindness in disguise. Not everything that matters can be explained, and not everything felt should be dismissed just because it can't be measured. It's like someone telling you to ignore the smell of smoke because there's no fire in sight. Sounds insane, right? But that's exactly what happens when your intuition says no, and someone convinces you to say yes. Intuition is the scent of danger before the flames. It's the wisdom of what isn't yet visible. Ask yourself, how many times have you regretted following your intuition? Now ask, how many times have you regretted not following it? Exactly. Intuition may take you into discomfort, but it rarely lies. What lies is fear, or the need to be accepted by those who don't really know your path. Let yourself feel, even if it seems irrational. Because sometimes what doesn't make sense is what saves you. When you start trusting that quiet inner voice, you begin to choose with soul, not with fear, not with pressure. And that changes everything. But what happens when someone goes even further and asks you to deny your own shadow? That's when the danger becomes psychological. Everyone has a shadow, not a metaphorical one, but a psychological one. It's the part of you that holds everything you've been told not to be, your anger, envy, impulses, fears. Jung believed that denying the shadow is one of the most dangerous things a person can do, because what you repress doesn't disappear. It hides and it festers. People who push you to just be positive, move on, or forget about it are often afraid of their own darkness, and they project that fear onto you. They want you to be nice, easy, harmless, not whole. But healing doesn't happen through denial. It happens through integration. And that starts by facing what makes you uncomfortable. Denying your shadow doesn't make you pure, it makes you split. You end up living a double life, one version for the world and a hidden version even you refuse to acknowledge. That split creates inner conflict, self-sabotage, and emotional exhaustion. You try to keep the mask on, but deep down, you know it's not you. The shadow isn't evil, it's repressed energy, and what's repressed eventually seeks expression. If you don't deal with your shadow consciously, it will show up unconsciously, in your relationships, your choices, your emotions. That's why Jung warned, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Imagine having a wild horse locked in a dark stable. You can't ignore it forever. One day, the door cracks, and it bolts out, uncontrollable. That's what happens when you suppress your shadow. It doesn't disappear. It breaks out, often in destructive ways, explosive anger, impulsive decisions, or mysterious depression with no clear source. People who ask you to deny your shadow aren't helping you. They're asking you to stay shallow. Because depth scares them. And if you start diving into yourself, you might see things they've spent a lifetime avoiding. Your healing threatens their comfort. Your self-awareness challenges their illusions. But here's the truth. There's gold in your shadow. Jung called it the golden shadow, the hidden potential buried beneath the shame. Your creativity, strength, passion, and authenticity often lie in the parts of you you've been taught to reject. Facing your shadow isn't just brave, it's transformative. The problem is, many relationships can't hold that transformation. When you start doing shadow work, you begin changing. Your needs shift, your tolerance for nonsense drops, and your voice gets louder. That threatens people who benefited from your silence. They'll say, "You've changed," and they'll mean it as an insult. But it's actually your first compliment. So ask yourself, who in your life encourages you to explore your darkness? And who runs the moment you stop pretending to be fine? That question will reveal more than any personality test. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. You either return to your mask or step deeper into your truth. But the path gets even more dangerous when you're pressured to go one step further, to not just hide your feelings, but to stop feeling them entirely. Repressing emotions is like trying to hold back the ocean with your bare hands. It might work for a moment, but eventually the waves crash through. Jung understood emotions as vital messages from the unconscious, not random noise to be silenced. When someone tells you to calm down, don't be so sensitive, or just let it go, they're asking you to shut down your internal compass. People fear emotions because emotions reveal truth. Anger shows boundaries. Sadness reveals loss. Anxiety uncovers tension between who you are and who you pretend to be. Repressing that is not strength, it's suppression. And suppressed emotion doesn't vanish. It mutates. It turns into physical symptoms, emotional numbness, or psychological confusion. You start to smile when you're hurting. You say, "I'm fine," while breaking inside. That's emotional repression, and it disconnects you from yourself. Over time, you lose access to what you feel. You stop trusting your reactions. You even start wondering if your pain is real. That's how deep the disconnection runs when emotions are treated like problems instead of guides. Some people are so uncomfortable with their own emotions that they punish you for expressing yours. They see your tears as weakness, your anger as threat, your vulnerability as drama. But that says more about their wounds than your truth. These people don't want emotional honesty, they want emotional silence, especially from you. And here's the trap. You start adapting. You shrink your feelings to make others comfortable. You learn to cry quietly, to hurt privately, to suffer silently. And you're praised for it, for being strong, for keeping it together. But deep down, you know this isn't strength, it's exile from your own heart. Jung believed healing begins when we bring emotion into consciousness. That means listening to what the feeling wants to say, not shutting it up. When you repress emotion, you push it into the shadow, and eventually, the shadow pushes back. Through nightmares, through breakdowns, through unexplained emotional spirals, you can't control. It's like pressing down a spring. The more you push, the harder it snaps back. Repressed grief can become depression. Repressed anger can become bitterness. Repressed fear can turn into paralysis. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget, and the soul keeps score, waiting for the day you finally feel. People who truly love you won't ask you to mute your soul. They'll sit with you in the storm. They'll make space for your tears, your rage, your silence, without judgment. That's emotional safety. Anything less is emotional manipulation dressed up as support. So look around. Who makes you feel like too much? Who only wants the good vibes version of you? And more importantly, why are you still shrinking to fit inside their comfort zone? Because next, they'll ask you to do the unthinkable, to give up your dreams, just to keep the peace. Dreams aren't fantasies, they're psychic blueprints. According to Jung, dreams, both literal and aspirational, carry messages from the unconscious that guide us toward wholeness. So when someone tells you to be realistic, settle down, or lower your expectations, they're not giving advice. They're cutting the thread that connects you to your deeper self. People who ask you to abandon your dreams often gave up on their own. Your ambition threatens them. It reminds them of what they once wanted but never dared to chase. So instead of cheering for you, they sabotage you with concern. They don't want you to fail. They want you to not try, because your courage exposes their cowardice. But the cost of surrendering your dreams is soul deep. You might gain stability, approval, even comfort, but lose the fire inside. You start waking up with no excitement, going through the motions. That's not peace, it's quiet despair. And eventually, that inner death leaks into your health, your energy, your relationships. When you stop dreaming, yourself goes silent. Jung believed the individuation process requires movement toward purpose. If your life is a river, your dreams are the current. Lose them, and you drift aimlessly. That's when people start asking, what's wrong with me? Not realizing they abandoned the one thing that gave life direction. Think of every major visionary in history. They were told to stop. Jung himself was mocked for exploring the unconscious. Nietzsche was called mad, Da Vinci too idealistic, but they kept going, not because they were fearless, but because the cost of not going was worse. They chose the storm of creation over the safety of surrender. People who want you to quit often mask it as love. I just don't want you to be disappointed. But disappointment isn't the enemy. Regret is. Disappointment passes. Regret stays. Regret whispers at 3 a.m., asking what might have happened if you had just kept going. That voice gets louder the longer you ignore it. And the harsh truth? Some relationships cannot survive your becoming. When you start chasing your dream, some people will fall away. Let them. The path to your true self is narrow. It's not meant for crowds. The more authentic your journey, the more selective your company must become. You don't owe anyone the sacrifice of your soul. Your dreams aren't selfish, they're sacred. They're how your unconscious speaks, how your future self reaches back to pull you forward. To abandon them is to betray not just who you are, but who you're meant to become. So ask yourself, now who in your life helps you build your dream, and who quietly hopes you'll give up? The answer will either set you free or bind you a little tighter. But if you've come this far, you already know the truth. What you need to do is act on it. Now that you've seen the signs, what are you going to do about them? Because awareness without action is just another form of self-betrayal. You already know who in your life dims your light, who silences your intuition, who fears your growth. The question is, how long will you keep shrinking just to stay in their good graces? It's not your job to be easy to handle. It's your duty to become who you really are, even if it makes some people uncomfortable. So I leave you with this. What parts of yourself have you been hiding, and who taught you to hide them? Let that question echo, not just in your mind, but in your decisions from this moment forward. If this made sense to you, if something in here hit where it hurts, then you're ready. Subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and stay with us. This journey goes deep, and it's just beginning.